Yeah, right there. Okay. Just so that I'd like to create the opportunity where you can witness from the outside the movements that you are doing before lunch, so that you can see the same thing. I'll remind you. It's okay, but is it okay if we just go through them, not in ATM like fashion, but just in kind of just tracking fashion? Okay. So I can't remember quite the directions, which one was front, which one was back, but you'll see the same. So Gloria, could you move yourself in such a way that the right ear goes forwards and the left ear goes backwards? Okay, now I'm not going to make any commentary, but you can see those words, Gloria enacts them in a certain way. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Now that's a really important point. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. We're witnessing. Now, can you now take the right eye forwards and the left eye backwards? Different intention. Yeah. Focal point's different. Is she enacting it any differently? These are like rhetorical questions. Can I see Gloria doing anything else that's different? Well, if I had been paying close enough attention, maybe I would, but I'm too busy talking, right? Now, Gloria, take your attention to the distal ends of your collarbones. Take the right distal end forward and the left distal end backwards. Mm-hmm. And now bring your attention to the proximal end of the collarbones. Uh-huh. Now stop. Now take your attention and think of taking the top of the right hip forwards and the top of the left hip backwards. Now, you know, if we're in a biomechanics lab with all the little bits and doodads attached, we could track all of these things. You know, is there some sort of statistical variance and da-da-da? Now take your attention to the top of the femurs, the head of the femurs. Really specific spot, don't you think? Ooh, that's different. Sorry, influencing the results. Was it me or was it, did you see? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now stop. Now take your attention to the front of the kneecaps. Take the right front, left back. Yeah, that's different again. Mm-hmm. And now to the back of the knees, the place where the knees fold when you're sitting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Now the beauty, thank you very much, Gloria. Now, can you come and sit here with me so you're close to the mic? Now the beauty of this is you can get an internal report, right? Yeah. You want to share any insider information? Yeah. You sure? Yeah. Well, like you heard when I went, oh, that's different. Now, you see, I shouldn't have said that because that's influenced you, right? So is there any of those different ways of intending that made a significance for you that was different?
They all felt different sensorially.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they felt very similar in the sensory world. I mean, in the somatic world. So somatically, they felt similar.
Mm-hmm.
Sensorially, they all felt different. But the ones from the hips, the legs, the leg ones, well, no, they all made a difference. They all made a difference, I think.
Mm.
Every focus made a difference, because I think it was where I was initiating from.
Great.
And whether I was initiating even from the right or the left made a difference. So with the collarbones, if I was initiating from the one going forward, it was different to when I was initiating from the one going back. So that seemed to be
Nice. Yep. So from the inside, lots of differences.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one of those, which, like, if so what are you going to base the choice on? Because choosing has to be based on some sort of criterion. Yes. So if we're sharing a microphone space, don't ruin it.
one as well.
I know I'm too tall for Andrew Denton. I'm sorry. So let me set up this criterion. Which one of those options would you choose to do if you had to do that 100 times? Okay, 200.
No, yeah, I think as far as a somatic movement went, I would pick the proximal ends of the collarbones, because that had the least distance between the point of initiation for the left side or the right side.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt more, it was less, there was less sensory impact.
Right. Okay.
So I could concentrate on the somatics.
Beautiful. Now let me give you another criterion. Okay. Now, you know, I was a martial arts instructor for a little while. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I believe you.
Yeah. You know another person like that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So if you had to hit somebody, which one of those options would you choose?
Ooh, I would choose
100 times. Hit them 100 times.
100 times.
I'm just joking about that.
I would choose the probably the hip. Possibly not the top of the hip bone, but the joint, top of the femur.
Okay. Is there a reason for that? I mean, it can be any reason you like, but is there a reason?
I think that felt probably a bit more powerful, and also I think it did something with my knees, something with sort of just probably something a bit more powerful.
Okay. So for one criterion, one, for another criterion, another. Different choices based on what's intended in the real world, right? Great. That's great. Thank you. All right. Thank you. That's good.
The other thing
you want to ask? You want to ask something? Yeah, go on, Gus.
What I noticed when we actually did the ATM, was at the end you got us to compare. Can I talk about that?
Correlate.
Yeah. Can I tell you about that?
Absolutely.
Because at the end of that, everything felt the same. It made no difference then where I started. Made no difference then. Every movement, the sensory input, and the physical feeling, the somatic feeling, felt integrated, felt correlated. Everything correlated.
That's great. Yeah. I had no anticipation of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what I thought. Oh, that's amazing. This is a whole ATM about integration.
Anybody else?
That was my experience.
Anybody else feel that? Yeah. So as soon as you asked to correlate one to the other, it started to coalesce into something.
Yeah. And they started to all have the same amount of power, the same sensory, and so the sensory wasn't distracting anymore.
Right.
It sort of somehow balanced.
Beautiful. See, I haven't even thought of that. I just wanted you to correlate.
It was very good.
See? So what now? Can I make a comment back to you? That last little exchange that we had, you sharing with me that information, this is the whole beauty of having conversations with each other about your experiences in the room, because you don't know what the other person's experiencing. You can't know until they say something, because it's totally private, right? So my reason for the correlation is because this is a specific way of using your attention and making perceptual judgments. And I don't mean judgmental, I mean judgments. Okay, how does this relate to that? How does that relate to this? That was my intent, so that I could reveal process. And yet, so when I revealed process and you went into the process, then you found what happens when you go into the process. Things start to coalesce. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, see, that was I hadn't even thought of that. So that's cool. I'll add that to the lesson next night. So, shall we go over here a little bit? Yeah. So, yeah. So when you were watching Gloria, what were you mostly seeing? Like, what was the global thing that you were seeing her do most of the time? Actually, all of the time. Yep, that's exactly. It was all rotating to one side. So how many ways are there to invite someone to rotate to one side? Quite a number. It's finite, but it's quite a number. But, you know, if you start to get, you know, how fine a distinction, you know. So notice the structure of it. Left, right, implying a middle. And then something's going forward, something's coming back. Now, you're all very sophisticated in taking a vocal instruction and making sense of it. In a larger group, maybe that would have had to be refined, a few more constraints, and so on and so on. Where are you, Lisa? Can you come? Because you said something as we were walking to lunch. Sorry, come on. I'll give you this. So you said something about your experience of when I said, you know, you said that was really nice, and then I said, what was nice about it? And you said,
I said, so I got a really clear sense of the difference between turning from a really central place around the central line and turning more from the outside of me. So, which is not so much, well, it is peripheral, but it's not like this peripheral, but, you know, this. And that each of those felt like I was shifting my weight differently over my feet, and was inviting, you know, like either the insides of my knees and pelvis and feet to move, or more of a more shifting weight across the ground a little bit more for that wider one. So.
And what did Zoran say? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
And then all those little bits, all those reference points kind of becoming part of the same sort of constellation of movement, which I guess is a little bit like what Gloria is saying. Then you have all these little markers that are all going, oh yeah, we're all going together now.
Yeah. You used one of my favourite words, constellation. Constellation. Are you an Aquarius? Sorry. Yeah, thank you. See, when I asked, that was a great lesson. Okay, what was good about it? So, as I told you, one of my intentions was to explore those little bits and show you process. But the other intention, and this is where you have your colleagues, who attended the Sydney segment, you have them to thank, because I keep on thinking, how can I present the information that I presented up here, but in a way that's even clearer? Now, I could go to the whiteboard, which is, of course, my favorite modus operandi, and say, look, this is Feldenkrais's conception of ideal standing, and it confers it's got this and this and this to it. But how can I bring a central idea of his notion of what ideal upright standing is into an ATM that, as far as I know, doesn't exist. You won't find that transcribed anywhere. It was created because I had that question in mind. And that question in mind came into being because there was, one, a dissatisfaction on my part on the way it was offered. There was some discontinuity, and then that can cause confusion, but then the fact that it can be presented a little bit better. So when you said your comment, and now when you said you're coalescing, you see those two things really fit nicely together about what my conception is of what an ATM process is about. It's fantastic. So there is, to let you know, when people come to us, when people will come to you to have an FI, they'll have all sorts of requests. And then we kind of, I'm going to use this word quite intentionally, then we abstract their request into a set of movements. Because a set of movements is not a real world action. Yeah, that's where the coalescing comes in. Yeah, an action is an action. No one thinks of the movements when they're acting, they think of the action. So you abstract that to a set of movements, and then you explore certain relationships in an FI, and then you bring them up to standing and somehow relate them to what they do in everyday life again. So that's kind of the process. Yeah. Now, rather than dealing with everybody's, things that they bring, I'm going to focus on one thing and one thing only for the whole 2 weeks, and that is one particular set of relationships. These set of relationships that we look at when in this thing called standing. Yeah. So in that ATM before lunch, what were you exploring? One of the major benefits that Feldenkrais argues for upright standing for human beings. Now, if we're going to be dogs again, different? Yeah. Did I do this? Who did I do this? No, I did this with the new mob. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, no. So, okay. So you can imagine Woof Woof here, right? On all fours, and something is behind. Well, Woof Woof now has to do all of this to look behind. Thankfully, Woof Woof has mobile ears. So their structure, their morphology has coped with this scenario in a different way to human beings. So rather than expend all of that energy back there, their ears, and of course their amazing smell, they know. They don't have to spin themselves around and expend all that energy to find out what's behind them. We don't expend much energy either when you turn like you were turning, Gloria, and like you were turning before lunch. We don't expend much energy turning around our own axis because most of the bits are gathered in towards a center. I remember there was that home study mid-last year about the rotating stick and all that. Well, that's what you were doing before lunch. I mentioned the word center once, by intention, and I mentioned the word turning once, not by intention, because I didn't want to say the word turning. Turning was implied all the way through, so that'll get edited out. Yeah. So I don't have to say turning, and I don't have to say anything about midline, and all of you end up turning around a midline, one side going forward, one side going back. And then you do what Feldenkrais would call so typically human. So typically human. And some of the examples that he gives is the bullfighter, monstrous, not monstrous in terms of they're a monstrous animal, but big, huge animal that can kill you, charging at you. The bullfighter stands like this and then flick, gone. Yeah. Same thing with the martial artist who really knows their stuff. Yeah, if punches coming in really quick, you wait, last moment, gone. So this is what we're superb at, and it takes so little energy when it's organized really well. Now, what's the ideas of organizing really well? Now, this has got to do with relationships. How do the parts relate to each other? I did this for the group in Sydney, so I'll do it for you. Yeah. So as a growing up teenager, I was very skinny bean, and some of the photos when I look back, it's like, you know, yeah. Yeah, you can see how quickly can I turn around myself like this. Yeah, it's not so squeezy, right? Yeah, it's a lot of stresses in a lot of different places. But most of all, from a front-back perspective, you can see if I've got a center line running down here, there's a lot of mass at the front, there's a lot of mass at the back, but not very much going through the imaginary axis. I'm not going to spin very fast. But, you know, if I'm up here like this is... yeah, really, this is so much easier. And it's about energy expenditure. Even a dog, even a big cat, you know, think about some of those really powerful big cats. They can turn around fast, but their metabolic energy expenditure is so much higher. They have to burn far more calories and kilojoules to get around. I hardly have to do anything. That's a major advantage. Why? And that's a wrong question. How come? Biology. Strict biology. Came out of the trees. Turning seemed to be kind of okay. Yeah. A big ape doesn't turn so well, but a big ape doesn't have a morphology of ears that can swivel. You won't see swiveling ears in big apes. They have to turn their eyes, their face, and their organs to scan the world. We don't have it either. We certainly don't have a good nose for things. We do have great auditory capacity, great eyes. So how do we solve it? We became more upright, more and more and more and more upright. Everything got collected. And that's what you could say, that's the purpose of that lesson, so that you find you'll organize the sets of relationships that allow you to turn. Yeah, Raymond. Chuck.
Right at the start, when you got us to move ahead to the side, it highlighted all that you've just been talking about for 5 minutes. My posture is obviously too far forward in the head, and as I turned to the side, the whole body tipped backwards because of the counterweight in my head moving from this to this.
Right.
So yeah, that made to my attention earlier.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. And now, you know, like these rollers here, you know, if we were shaped like that, gee, it'd be a lot better. Yeah. If we were shaped like a perfect cylinder, we'd spin so much better. But we're not. We're kind of shaped more like a flattened cylinder, like that kind of shape. So that means this width across drags us a bit. You will find this when you do some of the ATMs this week or next week, when you're having to kind of turn yourself around an axis. If you leave certain bits to one side, yeah, you then have to work a lot to lever it off the ground if it's left behind. But as soon as you bring that bit into the middle, all the work's gone. It's all gone. And we'll be playing some games using, you know, objects so that you can feel those differences in your hands as well as experience them during ATM. It's just the organization of body weights around this skeleton that we have. Yeah, Kevin.
It's that sense in yourself when you think about your medial line and those points, like the medial line, so in your pelvis and in your clavicle, the difference between the way that you turn,
Mm-hmm.
for me at least, was quite a way of rotationally through your point of reference, where your intention sort of comes from. versus more of a turn if using it, I guess, the exterior or wider sort of points in your body.
Yeah.
It was just more evident there was just more of a turn as opposed to a pivot or a rotation.
Yep.
Oh, that's probably the first time I spoke into it.
When it really stood out to to me that we were turning around our axis was with the eyes. Like if you go from the inside of your eyes, or an inside and an outside. What did I do? The two insides of my eyes. So to take one forward and one back, as opposed to the outside of your eyes. That midline is, it's quite, I don't know, profound. It really, really stood out how you're spinning around that.
Yeah. You differentiated it even more, right? You didn't just turn the face, because when you turn the face, one eye goes forward, one eye goes back. You're thinking of the eyeballs themselves. That's great. Yeah.
So it's really very centered when you use the inside.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's really good. And the other thing I was, you noticed I started to go for bits that are not usual bits that you go for. So something about novelty. But also those bits that I went for that are kind of novel, they're also bits that you will be addressing in FI scenarios. Okay. So here's what I'm proposing for the rest of the afternoon, and also let you know tomorrow morning. So we're going to go into an ATM. The ATM that we're about to do will then become a reference for your for FI practice, and I'm going to qualify the nature of the FI practice to hands-on FI practice, okay? Because I don't think there's a single beastie there. I think it's the same beastie, but lots of different, lots of little critters running around there, and they're all FI. So I'm qualifying it. You'll be using that ATM structure in an FI practice, as if you were still doing the ATM, but you have your hands attached to somebody. Does that make sense? Okay. I will attempt to just do the bare bones of the lesson, so don't think it's going to be the whole kit and caboodle. It's just the bare bones, so can I use your word? So that you just get the constellation moves, and then we'll take those constellation moves into the FI process. Now that I've said that, this leaves you with a choice. It's always difficult. Choosing is always so. There's different modes of getting into an ATM. You can be in the mode where it's just for you, and you immerse yourself in the experience of it for the sake of just for you. And then there's doing the ATM because you want to learn about the structure of the ATM. Now, as you're going through it, if you can keep track, when you drop into it's just for me and the experience of it, and when is it to do with knowing the composition of it? How come that's been put there? Why has that been done that? And drop in, drop out as you wish, because both inform each other, and I'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Yeah. So I think that process will take the rest of the day. Tomorrow I'll play a short video of Moshe giving a very particular model that is ultra relevant to functional integration. It's probably the only time that he talks about it. He does talk about it in Elusive Obvious, but the only time that he talks about it in the Amherst training. And it's a great model, and then I'll theorize around that model, and that will act as kind of like a thread throughout the next 2 weeks. So if we start that early in the morning, then we'll take it from there. So that's the structure for the rest of the day and tomorrow. Now, in this lesson, you will be lying on your side, and that's it. That's all I have to say. I was going to say more, but then I thought it's redundant. Don't say it. Don't say it.